So, you know that the way Europe, the US, UK, Canada, the way different countries handle today's transitions is going to affect your business, your mortgage, your life. It will actually decide who thrives and who falls behind. So that's why the AWTY index reveals not just leaders, that's easy for newspapers, but also looks at the weaknesses and the strengths of the different countries. And they matter for anyone planning research or innovation projects. That's why I published this index this year, and I will keep it updated every year. So yes, looking at the data in this index, we can see that the US dominates in digital trade, the EU leads on green transition, and on, guess what, regulation. Yes. Canada shines in housing stability, clearly. And the UK, well, it's still resilient in innovation, even though after Brexit it got very shaky. But here's the twist. When you look at the 30 years of data that I assembled, that story isn't linear. It's full of turning points. These transitions actually are very dependent on political decisions. So you can see cracks everywhere, and this could shift global competitiveness overnight. To explore this, I spoke in this episode with Gero Federkeil. I'm sorry, Gero. My pronunciation is awful. He's the head of international projects at the CHE think tank in Germany. And we had a great conversation. He told me why we should overcome those simplistic league tables like the ones they usually publish about with the university rankings. And he says that because universities aren't just numbers, they're complex ecosystems. So he explained how the new European higher education sector observatory integrates tools that he's been working on, like the U-Multirank, and that is impressive, this tool. It's a database of over 3,000 institutions all over Europe, with the Eurograduate surveys, and it makes possible to benchmark teaching, research, and even green transition performance all across Europe. So as he puts it, this benchmarking tool can really show the profiles and the strengths of institutions when compared to similar ones. You know what I say? If you can measure it, you can manage it. So higher education institutions are about to get data that will allow them to choose their strategies based on data, not on gut feelings. So later in this episode, we'll also break down a new funding opportunity. It's a serve call on remembrance and migration. So if your project connects to history, inclusion, or democratic resilience, this could be the call that secures your next big funding. So stick around. We'll connect global transition data, higher education innovation, and the real EU funding opportunities all in one. All in one episode. Hope you enjoy it. So, are the EU, the US, the UK, and Canada really prepared for the transitions that are reshaping our future? That's the idea of the AWTY Composite Index. I built it to track the evolution of 5 global transformations that are taking place. The green transition, you heard about it, the digital transition as well, the housing crisis, you might have heard about this, unfortunately, the transition to a new globalization and the transition to a war economy. They're not so much spoken about, but they're real and really important. I collected data from 1990 to 2024, and it's fascinating to see how the trajectories are so different. The EU leads overall in, guess what, regulation, in climate also, housing, curiously enough, in housing, but The EU has huge internal disparities, and that creates its own stresses. The US remains the innovation powerhouse, especially in digital trade and military research and development. But they have problems with affordability and inequality. Then the UK shows resilience in digital and finance, mostly in those two sectors, even though Brexit created more volatility in the areas of globalization, the new globalization, and housing. Then you look at Canada, you see that it consistently scores high in housing resilience, in governance, in stability, and it clearly may not be the top, but the top one, but it's always up there. So it's got a lot of punch above its weight in the global index. If you look at the green transition specifically, you can see that Europe is clearly the front runner. It's driven by policy, so there's a political decision making very much focused on the green transition, and it's driven by investment. The whole continent is investing in that transition. The US clearly accelerated after the Inflation Reduction Act in 2020, but in fact, Canada is excelling with steady climate policies. It keeps going. The UK clearly lost momentum after Brexit, and their policy is less and less aligned. Then look at the digital transition, and you see that the US clearly dominates the ICT services and platforms. The EU leads in governance and in inclusion, but lags in digital trade if compared to America. The UK remains strong in fintech, digital services, and Canada balances infrastructure and inclusion. Then, looking at the housing crisis transition, you can see that Canada and Northern Europe top the charts for affordability and regulation. The US shows urban affordability gaps. It's not affordable everywhere. It has huge gaps. The UK's rental markets are very much strained, and Southern Europe continues to lag. I know that. Looking at the new globalization, you can see that the EU once led, but after the Ukraine war, it slipped in the chart because many of its trade flows were disrupted. The US bounced back with the digital trade and also with foreign direct investment, while the UK is in the mid-tier, open but less diversified. Canada shows very strong policy connectivity and cultural exchange. And finally, if you look at the transition to a war economy, the US clearly dominates in spending, innovation, and alliances. The EU score rose sharply after 2014 and even more sharply after 2022. Guess why? And Eastern Europe leads that surge. They're clearly the ones ahead in this area. Once again, wonder why. The UK remains a key NATO player, while Canada ranks high in both stability and alliances, even though it spends less, lower spending. So, what does this mean? What can we get from all this data? And there's a lot of data in this index. It means that funding opportunities will follow the strengths of the different countries, different regions. In Europe, the funding opportunities will be mostly in green technologies, in housing resilience, governance frameworks. In the US, the funding opportunities will be especially in digital trade and dual use innovation and AI platforms. In the UK, fintech, defense, regulation will be opportunities even though there are major gaps in the regulation. And in Canada, climate adaptation, inclusive digital skills, housing models, all those areas show promise. So, in the end, what's the big lesson here? When you design your project and when you choose your partners, you need to take all this into account. So if you want the full breakdown with data, with charts from 1990 to 2024, just read the newsletter, Policydocs, the transitions letter. You can subscribe it free and get the executive report straight in your inbox in the thank you email. So go there. You have the link in the podcast notes and share with anyone you think might be interested. Share, like, every button possible will help in these matters. So leverage these insights to guide your projects, to form your partnerships, and to lead the change. Don't wait for a change. Just go. Let's go and lead it. So stay ahead in your field. Read the full AWTY 2024 report and see where your innovations can make the most impact. So welcome back to InnovEU, the EU Project Chronicles. Thank you for being with us. Today we have Gero Federkeil. I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. We have Gero with us, and I'm eager to hear what Gero has to share with us about his current projects. But first of all, would you introduce yourself, Gero?
Yes, hello, nice to be with you. My name is Gero Federkeil, so it was almost perfect, the pronunciation.
Not really.
I'm a trained sociologist, and I am working as the head of international projects at the Center for Higher Education in CHE in Germany. CHE is a non-for-profit think tank on all matters of higher education in Germany. And currently, my major work is on two large EU projects that are funded by the European Commission. One is HE Innovate, a self-assessment tool and networking tool on all issues of entrepreneurship and innovation. And the second is EHESO. EHESO is the acronym for the European Higher Education Sector Observatory. That is a large-scale tool that is integrating various or a number of existing European data and transparency tools. First of all, U-Multirank. This was a EU-funded project that ran from 2010 to 2024, and now it is integrated into this EHESO. And U-Multirank was the development of an alternative multidimensional global university ranking. The second major part of EHESO is a project that has formerly been called ITA, European Tertiary Education Register. This is a large database on all 3,000 plus European higher education institutions based on data from the national statistical offices. And it includes basic data on institutions like students, graduate staff, funding, and things like this. And very recently, another EU project, Eurograduate, has been integrated into EHESO. Eurograduate is a consortium project of European graduate surveys to get information on labor market entry and the kind of graduate tracking system for Europe. These were all integrated now into EHESO, and EHESO is step-by-step developing three major tools. The one is the European Higher Education Sector Scoreboard. This is already implemented on the EHESO website. And this is a tool providing some 30 plus indicators on the country level on higher education. And this tool is focused or addressed mainly to policymakers and is trying to monitor the EU policy agenda and to see where the European countries are positioned in terms of various indicators and dimensions. The second tool that will be launched very soon, I think this is a very important tool, and this is based on U-Multirank, is a benchmarking tool for higher education institutions. And this tool will allow to compare a university or higher education institutions with similar institutions all over Europe. The sample is these 3,000 institutions that have been covered by ITA. And this tool allows comparisons with similar institutions 40 indicators across a number of dimensions like teaching and learning, research, innovation and knowledge transfer, international orientation, regional engagement, and some societal challenges like the green transition and diversity. And this will be a very interactive tool, and we think that this is for higher education institutions, this is a much better tool than simplistic league tables who just give you one number saying your university is ranked number 8 compared to another university who is ranked number 15. So this benchmarking tool can really show the profiles and the particular strengths and also some of the weaknesses of institutions compared to similar institutions. So this tool is based on a similar tool we already developed in U-Multirank. And last but not least, a tool that will be fully implemented next year will be a tool for students that will help students to compare institutions across Europe and help them to make better informed choices about their university. So this is largely the scope of EHESO, and I think what really was a step forward in higher education was the approach of U-Multirank, which showed that we should overcome those simplistic league tables, who use composite indicators where one number, 85, or tries to characterize and assess a complex institution like a university or a higher education institution. And this is okay, in a way, these rankings, they are, let's say, so sexy for newspapers and for media, but I think they are not very helpful for most of higher education institutions we know in Europe or across the world.
Well, I think it's quite interesting, and it's enough for 2 or 3 podcasts. We could make 2 or 3 podcasts just about the EHESO. Is that the name?
EHESO, yeah, it's European Higher Education Sector Observatory. And it's published on the official EU website on the National Policies platform. So if you Google National Policies platform, then you will immediately see U-Multirank.
Before we dive into it, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Is that your first project, first EU project, or have you done?
Yeah, the last EU project was U-Multirank. As I said, that this started in 2010. And this had an interesting, history. Originally, it was stimulated by the French presidency ships in the European Union in 2008, and the French government had the idea that there should be something better than the global league tables like the Shanghai ranking or the Times Higher ranking. And so their idea was to develop an alternative system, which is more in line with the standards of social research, and it should be international and multidimensional, and not be reduced to the simplistic league tables. This was the start of U-Multirank, and then we developed it in a pilot study, and then we rolled it out with ever more institutions. In the first year, we started with 500 high institutions, mainly in Europe, and in the last edition that was published in 2022, we had more than 2,000 universities. 2/3 of them from Europe, but also 1/3 coming from non-European countries. And this has now been integrated into this EHESO, which has, the idea is to get some synergies between the various data tools. So, and this is what we are working on now.
Well, one of the things that I find very striking about that project is the ambition, because the numbers you're quoting are quite large. 3,000 higher education institutions in Europe. You cover all of European universities.
Yes, so it's mainly let's say the ETA universe. The universe is on the one hand all EU countries plus countries like Switzerland, Norway, still of course the UK, and we are trying to get some other countries in like Turkey, Albania, Moldavia, and step by step it should cover the Bologna area, or what's called the higher European higher education area.
So what you're saying is that in a short period of time, next year probably, someone who wants to apply for an university can actually compare using your data, can
Yes,
actually
exactly.
compare the alternatives on different dimensions.
Yes,
Is
exactly.
that
Yeah. So,
correct?
so yes, in the first step, in the first, well, our ideas we discussed with international student unions and student organizations. What are their needs for information for such a tool? And the idea is, in the end, to have a one-stop shop where a student or mobile students find all information they need, from information about the country, about admission, visa regulations, fees, to information about the universities and their profile, but also some field-based information about the subject they are interested in. And this is, but we were aware that such a large one-stop shop could only be implemented stepwise. And
Hmm.
so the first step, and this will be the first tool that will probably be launched in maybe in January, will be we call it at the moment, the working title is a European student benchmarking tool, and there the student can make some selections in what they are interested. Of course, they can say I want to study a bachelor or master level or physics or biology, and then they can also make some selections according to their own preferences if they want to go to a small or large university, to a research intense university, to a regional or international university, and they can, of course, also can select by countries or regions, and then they get a list of institutions that will match with their preferences, and then they can compare profiles and the number of indicators on those higher education institutions. And in the end, the last step is then they can get some subject-based information, mainly coming from a survey among students of the university, so they see how actual students assess their learning experience at their university.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so
But
the
now,
idea is that this, in a way, that this creates something like a shortlist, yeah, for students of institutions about they can inform in more detail, yeah.
mhm.
So it's not a ranking, yeah. It's rather a kind of matching tool for.
Yeah, it's quite a different approach from the traditional rankings that the press publishes
Yes, indeed,
frequently.
yeah.
It's a different approach, and from you're talking now from the perspective of the student, but from the perspective of the university of management. Now you're giving people information that they can use to manage their institution. If you can
Yes,
measure
exactly.
it, you can manage
That's
it.
the aim. So the aim of this institutional benchmarking tool is, I think, for it should be a tool for the strategic management of universities, but also a tool where they can learn from similar institutions. So at the moment you start this tool by, of course, you have to select your own institutions, and then you get automatically, based on an algorithm, a similarity index, you get institutions that are most similar to your own university in terms of various indicators. And then then you can add institutions by name, or if you're a member of association, you can include all members of this association, for example, also including the university alliances. And then you have a sample of institutions who are, well, on the one hand, are very similar to your own institution, or with which you want to compare your own institution. Yeah? And then you can find, well, almost 40 indicators across all these different dimensions, and you see where your institution performs very good, where it has, well, it's not so good, so to say, and then you can see, well, this helps to learn from others, but this might also be a tool to identify institutions that may be interesting for cooperation, yeah,
Mhm.
because they have a similar profile and are, let's say, playing in the similar league.
Well, I
Because
guess
we think it does not make much sense for to compare, let's say, a polytechnical institute in Portugal with Harvard, or an art school with a business school. This is why
yeah.
we say you
Mhm.
should look on comparable and similar institutions.
And that who you want to compare with will depend on your strategic choices. So I think
Yes,
that
exactly.
can
Yeah.
be quite interesting. But
Yes.
from the point of view of employers, of headhunters. That also gives a lot of information concerning the training that students have when they join the labor market. So,
Yes, I think so. Yeah, although it's not explicitly designed for employers, I think they still can get some valuable information from it. For example, they can see if they have, let's say, applicants from two universities, they can see this university is more international and this is very much focusing on practical experiences and entrepreneurship. And this kind of information can also be useful for employers. Yes.
sure. But tell us a little bit about that project. Has it been hard to get all that information? Because you are actually gathering a lot of data, and I guess from different sources. What's the difficulties you've been finding?
Yes, indeed. Well, we have indeed we have a number of data sources. So we have this data coming from the National Statistical Authority offices. These are in the meantime they are easy to get and they are harmonized and we have some routines to check them to make them comparable. Then we have, for example, then we have data from patent data from the European Patent Office. We have bibliometric data from bibliometric databases. Now we switched from the commercial providers of bibliometric databases to OpenAlex, which is an open data set on publications and citations so that people can even better verify the indicators we produce. And this is the most difficult part of our data source is the collection of data directly at the universities. So for the basic information like students, graduates, staff, we can rely on these data on the statistical offices, but we also want to provide some indicators on, let's say emergent issues, like the green transition, digitalization, diversity of students. And for these topics, we don't have existing international databases, which means we have to collect the data directly from the universities. And of course, universities have to provide many data to many data or many people are asking for data from universities, so we have to convince universities that it has some benefit for them if they provide the data for this project. And we think this institutional benchmarking tool is the main benefit for the institutions. Yeah. Currently, for example, when institutions do not actively provide those data to us that we don't have from other sources, then only half of the data shown in this benchmarking tool are visible for them, and the others are lacking. But if they actively participate in our survey and provide the data, then they have the full spectrum of information on their profile in the tool.
Well, I have one more question about this project because one of the issues that very often is raised about these projects, particularly by the Commission, is sustainability. How will the
Yes.
project survive after the end of its period? And the way I see it, you want to update your data every year.
Yes.
And when will this project end? How do you plan to keep it updated?
Yes, at the end, we have a Erasmus funding by the end of 2027. And of course, there is the idea that this should be a long-term project, yeah, because it will be in the end. I hope that it will be the largest data tool and data system on higher education of the European Commission. So we hope that it will be funded for a longer period. But we will have to see, and probably will have to apply again for a next funding period then from 2028
So
onwards. Yeah.
up to today, it's not guaranteed that it will survive after 2027.
No, but that's the usual way those EU projects are funded and organized. Yeah.
Okay, but I can see that's quite an important project for you, and I understand why.
Yeah.
Do you have other projects in mind for the near future?
Well, we recently started our engagement is a second large EU project, AG Innovate. So in AG Innovate was it changed. The consortium which is running the project changed based again on an EU tender, and we
It's not very
are
common. That doesn't happen very often, right?
no, no, obviously in this time, well, in a way, obviously the Commission thought that our ideas are better than those of the previous consortium, so they changed the consortium, and we are running this project now for half a year, or starting, yeah, no, yeah, starting early in January. And yeah, here this is an existing tool, yeah, that was well developed by the previous consortium, but we try to make it more user friendly, try to
We had
invent some.
Jean-Michel Viola here talking a little bit about the project. What I
Yes.
want to know is what are your plans for this tool? What are you going to change in it?
Yeah, our impression was that some of the tools, they are really great. For example, there's the self-assessment tools where people or a group of people in a university or across different universities can make a self-assessment on various aspects and dimensions of entrepreneurship and innovation. But our impression is also what we some feedback we received from higher education is that it does not have, well, it could have more impact in the universities. So we are trying to link this kind of self-assessment and various engagement with the tool closer to university management and leadership, so so that the tool can create a larger impact.
So that's your main goal
That's
to
the main goal, and yeah, and for this we are currently discussing and exploring new tools, new resources, and also to make the website more user friendly. We are at the moment we are thinking of introducing more particular, and let's say, user journeys for different types of users. Yeah, and for people who just want to have some information about what is Innovate,
Mm.
and for people who really want to engage with the tools and help and want to apply them within their university.
I can't resist asking you, let's say, a more broader question about higher education in Europe and in the world. How do you see the university evolving in the next years? Do you see any major earthquake-like changes? How do you assess the quality of European university?
Yeah, I think that Europe as a system has a strong higher education system, and I think this is not adequately reflected in the global rankings. Yeah, because
Mm.
they have they have a bias towards those large scale comprehensive research university of the Anglo-Saxon model. Yeah, and we know that the Harvard has more resources than most of all of the European universities. But I think one of the strengths of Europe, and I think we hope that this can also be shown by this EHESO scoreboard, is the diversity of its institution. Yeah. So we see in the US, they have really some of the world leading research university, but I think the strength of Europe is the diversity of institutions, with institutions of different profiles, different missions. We have, for example, we have one indicator that we already applied in U-Multirank. It's to indicator that tries to measure the relationship of universities with industry in terms of innovation and research, and it's an indicator that's measuring the number of co-publications with industrial partners, and we saw that in this indicator, many European universities of applied sciences, like the polytechnics in your country, are world leading, yeah, and they
Mm.
are in this indicator they are ahead. Many of them are ahead of the top research universities in the US, and this shows this strength of Europe, that we have this diverse set, this heterogeneity and diversity of institutions that have their different strengths and their different profiles.
I'm going to be mean to you and ask you a more difficult question. Do you
Yes.
think that the issues that these American universities are facing today, all these allegations about wokeness and
Yeah.
anti-Semitic I'm not sure that anti-Semitism, I'm not sure that's the correct English
Yes, it is. Yeah,
word
yeah.
for it. Do you think that will apply sooner or later in Europe, that we'll have similar discussions about that in the European universities? Do you see that happening here?
Yeah, I think we have some of those discussions, but I think not as systematic as in the US, where it's launched by this current government. Yeah, I've recently learned from talks with colleagues from the US that in funding now they always had this peer review that is assessing the quality of funding, but now the government wants to introduce a second step of a policy review after the peer review, where they want to see if the project is well correct in terms of their own policy philosophy, and this is really a threat to academic freedom.
Yeah, do you see that happening in Europe?
No, I don't think that this will happen. Of course, we have some of the discussions for. Don't know if you have seen this a while ago. Was a discussion about anti-Semitism in some of the Berlin universities, where there were some protests for pro Palestina, and indeed they had some anti-Semitic connotations. But these are smaller groups of students, but it's not the core of the universities.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. So
universities, they have to find a way how to deal with those kind of well, let's say racist, anti-Semitic, or whatever
I guess
elements.
Europe is so diverse that you'll find different realities in all across Europe.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So it's not that we don't have some problems, but not all across Europe, different
Yeah.
realities in different countries, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and personally, I think that the U.S. universities they will have severe damages by this new politics. You know that there is a platform for students to inform about universities. It's called study portals,
Mhm.
and they reported they count the clicks that users put on different universities that are in their system, and that they say obviously the interest for your American universities was really decreased tremendously. That the number of hits on US universities in the last year dropped by 40%.
Yeah, that
So
doesn't
that this
surprise me.
means students, mobile students, they obviously they do not are not so much interested anymore in the US.
Yeah, I don't
And
think that's
we know
surprising.
that the American universities that they are well they are depending on this kind of brain drain, or getting people from outside the US to into their system.
Yeah, that will be a whole different podcast,
Yes,
whole different
indeed.
episode. I want to thank you for your time. I want to ask your permission to publish your contacts in the podcast notes so that people
Yes,
can
please do
be
so.
in
Yeah,
touch with you.
yeah,
And I want to welcome you in Portugal whenever you're back, and see you soon.
yeah. Thank you. I hope to see you soon,
Do you have
Fernando.
any final message?
No, thanks. It was very interesting also for me to talk to you and to share my views on some of these topics.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. See you.
So, what if your project could secure EU funding to explore migration, colonialism, and multicultural societies while strengthening Europe's democratic resilience? The new Serve call on European remembrance is your chance. This is not just another history project. The EU is looking for initiatives that transform remembrance into action, addressing migration, decolonization, slavery, and the roots of racism to build inclusive societies. It's about connecting the past with today's struggles for equality and democracy. Projects should commemorate and educate on Europe's 20th century legacies, forced migration, colonialism, slavery, and how these shape today's multicultural societies. You're expected to create activities like public debates, exhibitions, training, education, intergenerational dialogue, and digitization of testimonies. The ultimate goal: combat racism, foster inclusion, and build a shared European memory. Winning projects will help fight historical distortion, strengthen democratic values, and promote a nuanced understanding of Europe's past. They will empower communities to engage in remembrance, strengthen social resilience, and create networks across borders. The total budget for this topic is 4.7 million euros, with a minimum grant of 50,000 euros per project. The call opened on the 19th of June 2025, and proposals are due by the 1st of October 2025 at 17 o'clock CET. Results will be announced in March 2026, and projects are expected to run for 12-24 months. Who can apply? Lead applicants must be non-profit legal entities or international organizations. Co-applicants can be non-profit or for-profit, but for-profit organizations must partner with a public or non-profit body. At least 2 organizations from eligible countries, EU member states and associated countries, are required. Projects can be national or transnational, but transnational partnerships are strongly encouraged. If you get this right, your organization not only secures EU funding, it becomes part of shaping Europe's democratic memory. You'll save time by aligning early with the call's objectives, save money by building the right partnerships, and gain credibility by leading on one of Europe's most urgent debates. For all details and to submit your proposal, visit the EU Funding and Tenders portal. Don't wait. October will arrive faster than you think.
Credits, author and host Fernando C. Gaspar, music Hugo Gaspar, Lisbon, Portugal, 2024. Reach us by email or DM.